with New World's release right around the corner, I thought it'd be fun to try out and experiment some theory crafted builds, see what I would be interested in playing when the actual release comes around. Now, if you're anything like me, your character and the progression that comes from playing is basically the best part of the game. And with New World, there is so many different options because you have 2 different weapons you can choose from, and your abilities that you get to use are based on 2 different trees from those weapons. There's a whole lot of customization that you can go through, theory craft, and just make it all your own, really. So let's look at a build, a battlemage ice build. So the idea here being that you're going to be using a great axe and an ice gauntlet. It doesn't really give you that many options for axes, and I didn't want to mess around with gear. But then in addition to that, the idea is that you're going to have an ice gem, an aquamarine gem that gives you 50% of your damage from your weapon, your melee weapon, converted to ice damage, which will play into additional damage based on your ice gauntlets talent tree. So to kick things off, we are going to be trying to group enemies as much as possible and then AoE damage them down with our axes and cast ice spells to do additional AoE damage, and just really try to group people together, stun them, slow them, get them all in, and just kind of grind them down with your axe and your ice spells. So we have 3 different abilities from the Great Axe trees. We have Charge to allow us to charge up into our enemies and start gathering them up. We've got Maelstrom, which will pull all of your enemies closer to you. And Gravity Well, which is a throwable AoE that will gather enemies even more. As you can see, there's a theme here. And if we look into some of the abilities down below, you can now do additional damage with your charge. Your light attacks with your great axe do 5% more damage, stacking up to 15%. When you make a critical hit with your great axe, you heal yourself for 10% of the damage done. You're going to be up in the action. You're not going to have a shield. You're going to need a little bit of healing. We jump down to Keen Edge. Your critical damage increased by 10%. And lastly, on this side, Feed. Great axe attacks against foes below 30% health heal you for 10% done. No, that's cut off a little bit there, but 10% healing for the damage done when the enemy is below 30% health. Just a little bit more healing to help you out. And Great Axe attacks against foes below 30% health crit 15% more often. So the idea being that you're going to try and crit quite a bit, deal some extra damage, heal yourself with crits, heal yourself when they're below 30% health, all good stuff. Over in the Mauler tree, our Maelstrom that pulls enemies closer is going to have an extended reach. It's going to consume projectiles. That one's not the most great ability there, but it does allow you to get access to No Reprieve, which gives you an extra spin, essentially doubling the damage and pulling your foes even closer to you. And then with Gravity Well, we have increased burst damage by 10% for each foe caught in the vortex. So the more people we can get in, the more damage we can deal. And Unyielding. Allies gain 10% fortify while standing in your well. Or if you're standing in your well, which you're probably going to be doing most of the time. Fortify is good, just reduces your damage that you take. And a couple abilities in this tree that are pretty good. If you get hit while holding an axe and you're below 50% health, you get 40 stamina. That 40 stamina can go a long way towards getting you the ability to maybe roll out of or dodge in any kind of way away from the action that's going on. 40% stamina when you're low health, pretty great. Gravity, after you pull one of your foes, they're held for 30% longer. So all of these different pulls that we're doing, we're holding our enemies even tighter, which will do more damage with the Gravity Well. And when we get to our Ice Gauntlet tree, is going to do some more damage with some of the AoE damage abilities in that tree. While holding a Great Axe, gain 10% damage when 3 or more enemies are within 4 meters. Pretty good. And while holding a great axe, gain 10% damage absorption when 3 or more foes are within 4 meters. So the more people we can get in, if we can hit that 3 enemy mark, we're going to be doing more damage. We're going to be taking less damage. And then at the very bottom of this tree, great axe attacks increase damage by 3% for 3 seconds, maximum of 10 stacks, so you can get that up to 30% increased damage for 3 seconds. And the idea being that you're going to be using light attacks, so you don't have to worry about potentially having that heavy attack line up and miss, and then you've lost all of your stacks. You're just going with your light attacks as much as possible. Keep that stack up, 30% extra damage. That's just crazy good. So moving on over to our second weapon, the Ice Gauntlet. This is going to be more of a secondary weapon that we're going to pop out just to do magical spell attacks, and then kind of put it back away and pull our axe back out and just continue hacking and slashing. So here, the more notable abilities are Ice Storm. Deals an AoE damage and slows enemies within a 20-meter range. That's a pretty huge range that you can cast it. It's a 5 meter radius, which is still pretty big. That's 10-meter diameter. And we also have Ice Shower, which will summon a little frost shower right in front of you. It's 1 meter by 5 meters. It's kind of more of like a fence or a field right in front of you, but this will also slow enemies and keep them right next to you. So we can keep them in our Ice Storm longer. We can keep them in our Gravity Well longer. Whole lot of stunning, whole lot of slowing is the idea here. And the Ice Spikes ability is not quite as great as those other two, but it is still quite a great ability, and it allows us to put more points into this tree that are useful. So looking into these abilities, so Ice Spikes creates a trail. It will stagger enemies, and then a mighty spike at the end of it that'll deal more damage. Now our ability is decreased by 10% if you're hit with the major spike. It will do increased damage. It will increase damage and add stagger along the path, which is good. We can stagger. This is probably the most useful. It makes the ability of Ice Spikes more useful, is you're staggering enemies, maybe allowing you to wait for more enemies to come in closer while you stagger the ones that are a little bit closer to you. And then Spiky Reach, this will add an AoE onto the end of that mighty spike, making it more useful for us in this build. Underneath the Ice Storm, we have incoming damage is increased by 10% for 3 seconds to enemies in Ice Storm if below 50% health. So this is going to put a debuff on your enemies, making it so that they take even more damage when they're below 50% health. So when our axes come in, we start hitting them with our axes. We are doing 10% more damage. Ice Storm mana cost is decreased by 80% at full mana. This is actually something I didn't think about at the beginning, but if you are mainly using your axe, your mana is regenerating in the background. When you swap over to do your Ice Gauntlet abilities, you drop down Ice Storm first. You've got an 80% decrease mana cost at full mana. So first thing you cast, you go ahead, you cast your other 2 abilities, then you swap back to your axe, and by the time you come back around, because you didn't use 80% of the mana from this, you are probably going to get back up to your 100% mana even faster. And lastly, increase damage by 10% to each enemy in Ice Storm. So just some really great debuffs. This is probably you're going to be, I hate this term, your bread and butter, your meat and potatoes. It's a very well received term. It's not my favorite, but that's what it's going to be. You're going to be using this quite a bit, and that's kind of the theme for this build. And then Ice Shower is that kind of CC ability, and you can increase the duration to 7 seconds. Awesome. From 4 seconds up to 7 seconds, almost double the duration of that ability. An ally or yourself moving through this gets a 25% speed boost for 2 seconds. Pretty great. And Frostbite applies rend to target, reducing their defenses by 10%. This applies in a debuff called Frostbite. Now, one more thing I should mention about these 2 abilities is they create what the game terms as a frosted area. So Ice Shower and Ice Storm both create a frosted area, which give you some buffs over when we look at passives. Now, this left side of the tree, I don't have very many passives. I just have this one, increased critical chance if hitting an enemy in a frosted area or with Frostbite. So the Ice Storm and the Ice Shower both create frosted areas. Ice Shower also creates Frostbite. So you're doing increased critical chance against those enemies. 20%, pretty huge. And then at the very bottom of this tree, something that seems super interesting, and I'm hoping that it will work in the way that I'm imagining. Ultimate Chill, ice abilities, chill targets, increasing ice damage by 35% for 3 seconds. The idea being that ice abilities, your ice, all of these that we were just mentioning, will increase ice damage taken by 35%. And then you look at the gem I mentioned earlier, you take your axe swings now do 50% elemental damage in ice damage. So the idea being that you pop out your ice storm, you've got all your enemies tight and close, you start swinging away with your axe. Well, 50% of your damage is ice damage. Well, increase the damage of that by 35%. Seems really cool. I'm hoping that it works. Some of these passive abilities don't transition over when you swap weapons back, so I'm hoping that this is a debuff that is put on your enemies that sticks around when you swap weapons. Now, looking at a couple of the last passives, we've got blocking with Ice Gauntlet will convert mana to stamina on hit. This one, I'm not so sure if that's something that we want. We can move this point around. It was originally a point I put in just to get to the Ice Shower ability, but then I kind of also like this Quick Frost, increase speed by 10% in a frosted area, so you could take one of these two out and kind of put it anywhere else in these other passives that are interesting to you, because these frosted areas, your Ice Shower, your Ice Storm, pretty big radius, and that will allow you to just move around 10% faster in that area. Additionally, we have Refreshing Frost, reduce all active cooldowns for ice abilities by 20% when casting an ability in a frosted area. So we pop down our Ice Storm, and now our other abilities will reduce by 20% when we are casting in that area. So mostly it's going to be our Ice Storm cooldown is going to be reduced because we pop that down, then we'll pop these other two abilities, decreasing our Ice Storm by 40%. And if you do, depending on what order you'll do it in, he'll decrease the other ones by 20%. Just getting those cooldowns off cooldown, getting those abilities off cooldown as fast as possible seems pretty good. And then lastly, we've got casting an ice ability, creates an ice hardened layer granting 40% fortify, 20% fortify, mix the word fortify and 20, anyways, fortify by 20% for 2 seconds. Not a super long buff. I've noticed that the buffs in New World do not seem to last very long, but they seem to all be pretty powerful. Now, lastly, the thing I wanted to talk about is strength and strength and intelligence, your attributes, and where I think applying these attributes could be pretty helpful. We'll move the camera over to the other side so we can see these. Now, when you get to certain milestones, for example, with strength at 50 points put into your strength tree, you get 5% additional damage to melee weapon light attacks. Now, I'm not going to be looking at the secondary abilities. Those don't matter so much to me. It is a great boon to have 10% mining speed, but isn't really the point of this. And then, in addition, we'll put 150 points into intelligence, which will get you 10% additional damage to light and heavy magic attacks. You're not going to be doing very many shots with your heavy and magic attacks, but these other two abilities seem pretty good. 10% critical hit chance or hit damage. So I believe that this transfers over because, for example, the dexterity tree at 50 points says that you have a 5% chance to critical hit, and I believe that applies to all weapons. So if you have the points, getting 50 points into dexterity will just give you 5% flat additional crit, which is really great. But that's why I think that your critical hit damage at 100 points into intelligence would apply to your axes and everything else. Now, you at 150 points, you get 15% increase to elemental damage. What I was showing before, I believe that is just a flat increase of 15% damage to all of your Ice Gauntlet abilities, and in addition, because you have an ice gem on your axe, you're doing 15% additional damage with that section. So all in all, if you have your ice ability Ultimate Chill going and you have 150 points in intelligence, you're looking at an additional 50% damage already to your weapon, doing 50% more. So the way that this game works is your weapons will increase in damage based on how many points you put into your attributes. And because we have so many more points in intelligence, you might be thinking, well, why do we have such a low strength? We're going to be swinging an axe a lot. Well, because this gem, we are going to have that 50% damage scale off of intelligence. So we're going to be getting quite a bit of damage off of our intelligence rather than our strength. Hence the kind of battle mage build and battle mage feel to this build. So pretty exciting stuff. I'm excited for this. The only reason I only put this many points into the trees because you only have a guaranteed 190 points from leveling that you can put into trees. You do get quite a bit of points from all of your gear. It looks like at the tier 5 gear that you can get, everything, all of your 5 different pieces of gear each give 20 different attribute points, and there's different ways that those are all spread about. So I mean, flat out just from that you have an additional from your 5 pieces here, you have an additional 100 points. From your weapon, you have another 25 in each slot. And then all of these amulet, earrings, and rings, I haven't gone through to see what the maximum amount of attributes you can get from that, but it looks like they might be all around 20 as well. So we're looking at an additional 250 points. So you could max out your intelligence, put some points into dexterity, get extra critical chance, put some more points into strength, just get some flat more damage. If you choose to do some heavy attacks, that could be helpful for you. And maybe even put some points into focus. Now, focus only buffs the damage of the life staff, but 10% mana regeneration or adding 20% to your mana pool, pretty great stuff. And I don't think that should be really looked over as not being all that great. Now, that is my theory crafted battle mage ice build for New World. It seems pretty fun. I am thinking this is going to be something that I try out starting from the beginning of New World, but I am also excited to potentially check out a sort of paladin build where you wield a great hammer and a life staff. And so you've constantly got AoE healing going on from your life staff, and you're going in with your big old maul warhammer, and you just gives me a lot of paladin vibes going on. So I think that is going to be the next theory craft build that I do. But until then, see you guys in the next video. Peace out.